Thank you for listening to the BJJBrick Podcast. We'll be bringing you Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and good times. We hope to flatten your Jiu-Jitsu learning curve, help you get the most out of your grappling ability, and meet your goals both on and off the mat.
Welcome back, my friends, to the BJJBrick Podcast. This is episode 286, and our topic for tonight is how to be a good student, or more accurately, how to be a great student, which is something we all want to be. My name is Joe. I am the captain, and I'm here with my mates, Byron and Gary. How you guys doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Captain. A couple people have started calling me Gilligan. I don't know why, but maybe you can shed some light on that, Captain.
Well, how's the professor?
Aye, Captain. Doing well here. Looking for the rest of the bunch. I got the two ones that I would rather hang out with the least of all.
Yeah,
I guess the rich guy.
You'd rather hang out with Mr. Howell.
Mr.
Right.
Howell, yeah. He seemed kind of grumpy. Well, we're on this island together, and this will be a fun episode. It's a topic episode when we just trap the three of us on this island, and we kind of talk about something. And Joe mentioned it already: how to be a great student. So here we are. We got our coconuts in hand, and
I hope we got our coke. I hope they are coconuts that we have in our hands.
It didn't feel that big. I don't know, man.
This show is starting off as a disaster, kind of like the SS Minnow that got shipwrecked.
Unlike the SS Minnow, this will not be a 3-hour tour. We hope to wrap it up in an hour, maybe possibly a little bit more. We'll see what we get. If you don't know all the references we're talking about,
just sit right back and you'll hear a tale of a fateful trip that started from this tropic port aboard this tiny ship. The mate was a mighty sailing man, the skipper brave and sure. 5 passengers set sail that day for a 3-hour tour.
possibly a lot of the international crowd doesn't know what Gilligan's Island is. It's an old TV show from the 80s? 70s?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I'm sure that probably is an international sensation. Was. It's probably less about where you live and how old than how old you are, whether you know what Gilligan's Island is.
No, if they put that on Netflix, I would watch it.
Gary, I think you'd watch one and then realize that it's not that good.
I don't know. That was like one of my favorite shows. I wish I'd have a chance to watch it. Maybe I would realize it wasn't that good, but I'd like to at least try.
Every episode was the same. They find a way to get off the island, and then somehow it falls apart and they don't get off the island.
Joe was telling me earlier that his favorite episode was the one when the Harlem Globetrotters got stuck on the island, and they got off, but Gilligan and his buddies didn't.
Yeah, somehow Gilligan will mess it up.
Yep, always Gilligan.
Just he's out there playing games, and just oftentimes he'll drop the ball, and it won't work for him because he's playing these silly little games.
Well, you know what would really help him? It's kind of like what you have done, Byron, to help people that are new in the jiu-jitsu game. You have an audio book. We have a link to it on the show notes. It's called Your First Year in Jiu-Jitsu and Your First Year in BJJ. And basically what it's doing is Byron's going to try to help you out, try to make your first year the most productive. First year is always a little bit harder. There's always a higher dropout rate. But if you listen to Byron's book, it'll help everything make sense a little bit more. We've got great reviews on it. Definitely check it out. Like I said, we have a link to it on the show notes. It's only $11.99 for 2.5 hours of content. So you can't beat that.
Gary, I like where you took that. You surprised me. I thought I set you up with the easy softball to talk about the 6 games for BJJ. Gilligan's always playing these little games and getting mixed up. And you keep me on my toes.
Well, remember, I'm Gilligan of this group, so I messed it up. That's what Gilligan does.
I didn't think you messed it up. I thought you picked the ball up and ran with it.
Thank you, Joe. I'm glad somebody's got my back, literally.
Yep.
Well, also, Gary, you don't only just bring the, the good transitions there. Our quote of the week is from Gary.
Yeah. Well, you think about it. When we're lost on the island, we need to be able to use the natural resources. We use sticks to build huts. We use sticks to make fire. We use sticks to make spears for self-defense and to feed ourselves. And, one, I thought a really good quote that I saw this week, sticks in a bundle are unbreakable. And, thinking about jiu-jitsu, I think about jiu-jitsu is a team sport. I think some people on the outside may just see Byron or Joe on the mat and nobody else around except on the sidelines cheering them on. And they're the ones out there doing the grappling, doing the fighting, trying to win the match. And, to the untrained eye, they're like, hey, this is an individual sport. But I look at sticks in a bundle are unbreakable. I look at if we as a team, if we as a gym, we all work together as a common goal, and that goal, could be to get better. If we all work and we all are in unison trying to better each other, we're going to be unbreakable. Kind of like, Byron's armbar. It's unbreakable. You can't get out of it.
I tried to armbar a bundle of sticks. Couldn't break.
Well, the crazy thing is I send this quote to these guys one night. I thought I came up with a good quote. I really liked it.
This is Gary's annual quote that he like. You don't write a lot of quotes. You don't find, but when you do, it's a good one like this one, Gary. So you text us this quote.
They destroyed it. I checked back like 5 minutes later, and my text message and alert went off about 100 times. But,
yeah, but we weren't mocking you, Gary. We were laughing with you. No, it's a great quote. In fact, when it came up on the show notes tonight that we were talking about this quote, I thought, I don't care where Gary takes it. I'm going to comment in about the team aspect of jiu-jitsu. Man, you nailed it. That's exactly what I was thinking is, how the team supports each other. And yeah, if you're on an island by yourself, whether it be Gilligan's Island or any other island, it's easy to be defeated. But if you've got your team with you, then you're in good shape.
You think about this podcast, sticks in a bundle, me, Byron, and Joe here. If we're on the same page, if we're working together for the same common goal, man, we're going to do it. And we have been working, on the same common goal. We're unbreakable. I don't know if anybody saw the new press release, but we're ranked number 2 in a podcast. Byron, what was that? The local on the internet, it was somebody ranking martial arts podcasts, and we were ranked 2. So see how that worked, or was it number 3? I can't remember.
No, we're
2.
number 2. Yep.
Yeah. Joe Rogan's podcast was 3.
We're the number 2 ranked martial arts podcast by this podcast ranking group. I don't know. I don't really know what it is, but it's really cool, and glad that they found some value in what we do. And just for fun for this episode, if you haven't caught on already, Joe introduced the show. We like to have fun, just like we do on the mats. And Joe just happened to throw in a Gilligan's Island theme at the beginning of the show. Gary and I didn't expect this. I have a feeling the whole show will have a lot of great value, a lot of good information, but we're going to keep throwing in the Gilligan Island slant as we go through this episode, because you already did it with the 6 in a bundle.
Byron, though.
Yes.
I don't know if it was Joe. Joe said he's the captain, and Joe really is the captain.
That's true.
I was the one who took it to I'm Gilligan and turned it into a Gilligan's Island. I think Joe was just going, hey, this is my profession.
He pulled rank on us.
See, that's how sticks in a bundle work, Gary. I knew there was something there. I wasn't sure what it was. I just thought I'll throw this out and see where they go with it.
Well, it's because we're a team. We work together. Joe kind of knew if he threw that out there, something was going to happen, and he knew we're on the same page.
All right, guys,
quit rubbing what page we're on.
Quit rubbing your sticks together. Yeah.
Fire.
But it's smoking, Byron.
Joe has an off the mat lesson for us.
Yeah, let's see if we can drag this back to adulthood. All right, so for the off the mat lesson this week, if you caught last week's podcast, I talked about running emergency response drills on the vessels. I work in the offshore industry on boats, and so it's important to us that we know how to respond to emergencies if they arise. When you're 200 miles offshore, you can't call the fire department. So we drill every week, and it's really important to do it correctly. One of the drills we run is a abandoned ship drill. And so the captain sounds the alarm, says this is a drill, abandoned ship. And everybody knows what they're supposed to bring with them. You don't show up at the life raft empty-handed. So Byron, if you're on this drill, I'm going to ask you to get the EPIRB, the Emergency Position Indicating Beacon, and bring that with you. And Gary, I'm going to ask you to get the SART. You're going to bring that with you. That's the search and rescue transponder. Somebody else is going to grab some flares. The cook's going to grab a first aid kit and some extra water. Everybody's going to bring their stuff to the embarkation station. We're going to simulate launching the life rafts and simulate getting in them, and that will be the end of our drill. And so if we do that every week, then eventually, if we are unfortunate enough to actually be on a vessel sinking, we'll know exactly what to do and how to get ourselves and all of our equipment into the life raft.
Where then you proceed to the island.
Exactly. So, Gary, when we get in the life raft, what do you do with the SART?
The first thing I'm going to do is shart the minute we get in that life raft, right? Oh, wait, the SART. I'm going to turn the SART on so somebody can, try to find out where we're at.
Going to put it in the water?
I would maybe put it in the boat.
Okay.
Byron,
what are you going to do with the EPIRB?
What does that stand for again?
Emergency Positioning Indicating Beacon.
I'm going to activate it.
All right. You going to put it in the water?
If it's water activated, yes. If it's not water activated, no. I will keep it away from Gary because I don't want it to get muddy.
So the EPIRB sends a signal to a satellite, which then sends a signal to an Earth station exactly where we are. And it's only going to send that signal if we've activated it or if the boat's gone down and it got wet. And so when somebody gets that signal, they're going to know exactly where we are and they're going to send help. But it's line of sight. It can only send a signal to the satellite if it can see the satellite. So if Byron doesn't really understand how this thing works, he thinks it's the most important thing in getting saved, he might tuck it inside his jacket. I'm going to keep this with me. It's never going to send the signal. Now, the best thing to do with that is to tie it onto the life raft, and it's got 20 feet of line, and just let it float free, and that way there's nothing in between it and the open sky. But if you didn't know that, you might not do the right thing. Now, the SART, on the other hand, it answers a radar transmission. So if there are no ships in the area with their radars turned on, you can hold that thing up all day long. It's not going to do any good. The only thing it's going to do is drain the battery, and then when you really need it, it's not going to work. So it's important that you know how to turn it on and off, and that you know if there's another ship in the area that you hold it up as high as you can. What would happen, Byron, if you were fumbling around with pyrotechnic flares inside a rubber life raft and one accident went off?
It would probably cost us the rubber life craft at best.
Depending on what way you shoot it, depending on what way it was pointed.
We probably wouldn't have a life raft to be in anymore. So my point is this. There are some aspects of emergency response that require some education and some knowledge. And you can go through the drills every week and know that I grab this thing and I take it to the life raft. But if you don't understand exactly how it works and how to best utilize it, it's not going to do you a whole lot of good. And if you drag this to jiu-jitsu, I think this reinforces the need to study jiu-jitsu, to study details. You can watch people rolling and kind of get an idea what they're doing, and you can roll around and you can easily sort of figure out how to pull somebody in your guard, and you can actually pretty easily figure out how to sort of lock up a Kimura type grip. But unless you really study the details of how to finish that, it's going to be hard, and a cross collar choke, the fine details of what you do with your wrist make all the difference in the world. So I guess where I would go with this life lesson, if it makes sense to me, buddy, is if you're rolling and you're doing okay rolling, but you're not getting finishes. And when you go to sweep somebody, it's just turning into scrambles. You're not getting a clean sweep. When you go to pass somebody's guard, it's kind of a scramble. You're not getting a clean pass. You're not settling into side control the way you hope to. I'm going to suggest that maybe you have the big picture like you'd get from doing drills on the boat, but you need to hone in on some of the fine details, do some education, and do some research. Does that make any sense, Gary?
Joe, it does make sense. Like what you were saying, if you go for a sweep and you're not getting the sweep, it turns into a scramble. We are missing something. Maybe we're the guy, you say, hey, Gary, get the SART. And I think you said shart. And, I totally mess up. Or, Byron doesn't put the other thing in the water. Or one of us is dumb enough to play around with the flares. And, we got our finger on the trigger. We slip and fall, and next thing you know, we sink. Not only as the boat sunk, the life raft is sunk. And so, we need to, as you say, pull that back onto the mat. There's maybe little things we're missing. Like you said, we see the big picture. We know how to lock up a Kimura, but just getting that Kimura grip doesn't mean you're going to finish it. You have to be able to know the way your opponent reacts. You have to, all those variables come into play of what you need to do at that point. And without studying the finer details, knowing exactly what you need to do, you're going to, be in a little bit of trouble. I mean, you're still going to have fun out on the mat, but like you said, you may not be getting the finish.
Hey, Gilligan, little buddy. I think you're right on there, and you're doing good. I got a couple of things to add to that. He always calls him little buddy. It's also relative. If you're a purple belt and you're like, oh, my Kimuras are great, I'm Kimura in all these white belts, but you can't quite finish on other purple belts, that's, I think, where you need to look at, okay, I need to up my detail. I need to fine-tune my Kimura game a little bit. And you should ultimately be trying to step up a level with that. So as purple belt, you should be trying to finish that Kimura on brown belts, on black belts. And that's how you know you've really got it dialed in, not if you could pick on the lower belts with it. Same thing with size. If you're the white belt and you got 100 pounds on everybody as the white belts and you're nailing all these techniques, try to step up and get the blue belts with that. And maybe size does make a difference. It was like strength and power and that sort of thing. Maybe even purple belts, and it depends where you're at. But just know that it goes deep. This ocean is deep around this island here, and it's worth digging into and learning the finer details of these techniques.
Exactly. You can splash around on the lagoon all you want, but you're only going to develop a certain amount of swimming skills doing that. But if you venture out into the open waters, that's where you're really going to learn how to swim.
Yeah, you're totally correct on that, Joe. You think about if we, venture out on the open waters and really learn how to swim, we're going to see that performance out on the mat. You're probably going to enter a tournament. You're probably, you've got those skills. There's a good chance you're going to place in that tournament. And then what happens when you place? You get to go home with Ginger.
Whoa, hey.
But I'm telling you, the guy with the discerning eye, he always knew that Marianne was where it was at.
You're onto something there, Joe. We can also get on to the topic of the episode. If you notice, this episode is a little different. At the end of the month, last episode of the month, we like to do a topic episode. I guess I mentioned that a little bit before, but that's where this one shows up. And I think we've got a great topic. Sometimes we were like searching for topics and we can't figure it out. As soon as this topic kind of hit me, I'm like, this needs to be an episode right away. So it got bumped up to the front of the line here, and we're making it today.
Professor, this one is called How to Be a Great Student. And you've taught a lot of people there, Byron. Or Professor Byron, I'm sorry. You've taught a lot of people. What are some tips you have to become a good student? I mean, if we want to perform our best, we want our school to perform the best, kind of like what we were talking about, sticks in a bundle or unbreakable. This topic goes with that quote we had. If our school is going to do the best it can, we need to be good students. We all need to be on the same page. We all need to be, going for that, same goal, trying to make each other better.
Yeah, I think we could have different goals. To play the devil's advocate, Gary,
we can
some
have
people
different
could
goals,
be
but
like competition oriented, and some people could be hobbyists, and they could all be okay in the same gym.
Yeah, but I still think I think most people who train do want to get better.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the goal. I think probably about everybody. I mean, I'm not saying, me, I'm not looking to win a world championship. I'm not looking to train more than a couple times a week. I want to have fun when I'm doing it, but I do want to get better. And I just think that if we're all, I kind of look at like a gym, and you do have a whole bunch of different individuals in your gym, in your school. And it's up to the instructors to set a culture, kind of where we want to go. And, the students, you want to try to be a good student to really make that school perform even better. And you'll have more fun for the people who are hobbyists and just want to have fun. You will get better. The competitors will get better. Whoever else is there, is just going to make that school better. We all have to be, invested into making this school the best.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different roles to be played, and Gary, you're talking about like a diverse group of people, which is really what you have in most jiu-jitsu classes. And you might think, hey, I got a group of a dozen people between the ages of 18 to 25. They're black belts, they're elite competitors. What good is a guy who's almost 60 going to be able to do on that team? And maybe not super competitive roles. Maybe he's real knowledgeable on the mat. But you know what? People that age are going through the stages of life, and they're trying to figure out how they're making some decisions in their off the mat life. And I think that there's a lot of value in having somebody who's been there, done that. Hey, you're getting a little bit partying on your weekends. You want to be a world champion or not? Getting a little bit of that kind of that fatherly figure to step in sometimes when maybe it's not there, maybe they are. Who knows? But just there's different roles you could fill. It doesn't always have to be on the mat rolling with somebody to be a great teammate.
Yeah, who else? Like when they hurt their knee, from competitive training, can they ask about wheelchairs? Can they ask about, crutches? Guys like Joe and I, we've got experience. We can help them out.
Yep, I've got the hookup, man.
Yeah, and when they need to know how many miles per gallon the new Buick gets, we know all about Buicks, so we'll take care of them.
Or what happens when they take the blue pill? So we're to get on to being a great student, we have a bit of a list here, and we'll just see what we pick off that list and want to talk about. But it's one of the big things is to show up and to be ready when you get there. Not to say like when you get there, but like show up and be ready for class. Don't come in exhausted. Don't come in hungry or overeating right before you walk in the door. Show up and be ready to train. And I think that's a good way just to be like in the right state of mind and body from the get-go. If you're there mentally, physically, show up, you're ready to go. That's a good way to start things.
Yeah, I agree. I would add one thing. You talk about showing up and not necessarily having overate or not necessarily showing up hungry or showing up tired. Sometimes those things, though, are a little bit outside your control.
Yeah.
And I think more importantly, it's I'm going to be ready to train no matter what state I'm in. Show up with that attitude. I'm not going to use the fact that I had a 10 or 12-hour day at work as an excuse. This is the day I've chosen to train, so I'm going to go there ready to train, even though I'm going to be a little tired and maybe I skipped dinner. So I totally agree with what you're saying, Byron, that when you have the choice, get rest, get hydrated, eat properly, But if for some reason that's out of your control and you can't necessarily do those things, but you go to class anyway, make up your mind you're going to be ready regardless.
I really like that, Joe, because I was going to bring up, we've got busy people and, sometimes I can't, get anything to eat beforehand. Sometimes I may only have time to eat beforehand, and I probably shouldn't have, but I know this might be my only time. And I was sitting there thinking, man, I would rather show up and be hungry than, not show up, But I like what you said. So show up, but make sure you're ready. Make sure you're paying attention. Make sure you're a good student. Pay attention. Be an asset to your training partners. And, like Byron said, if you overeat, don't just sit over in the corner holding your stomach and say, oh, my stomach hurts. I can't do these drills. So sorry, you don't have a partner while we're drilling.
Yeah, I like what Joe added there because I think I did need some correction there. I show up tired all the time. Maybe I'm working a lot the day before, working late, or didn't get much sleep at all. And that doesn't mean I'm not going to go to class, but that does mean sometimes I get kind of sleepy.
You think about it. We can all go to sleep on the mat. It just takes one mistake.
Yeah, and then be like, oh, no, you didn't choke me out, man. I had a long day at work.
Yeah.
Needed a nap.
Another important thing that just kind of a mindset to it is just consider yourself an asset to the room and look for ways to improve that. If you walk in the classroom and you're there to just like take, and then go home. So that would be take some technique from your instructor, and then take during the rolling session. So you impose your will, or you're just working for yourself while you're rolling. That's kind of that attitude. Be the asset to the room. So if you show up to the class, you might tell the instructor, hey, I'm excited to be here today. I'm looking forward to what you're showing. Something like that, something kind of positive is always nice to hear. You'd be surprised how little instructors hear like feedback of the class. And then during rolling, if Joe and I are rolling and all Joe is going to do is just smash my half guard the entire day, and it's going to be miserable because he's working on his half guard passes and I can't seem to get out of this situation. Well, that's great for Joe because he wants to work on half guard passes, but maybe I want to work on something a little different. So the fact that Joe doesn't keep me there for the entire 5 or 10 minute round, that's a choice that he's letting me kind of work something else. And I think that's a benefit to everybody to let them work part of their game and you work part of your game. And if you typically can control the role, that's up to you to make sure that happens for both people. So just consider it like not just to take. You don't just show up and take away. It's not a restaurant where you take in all the food, but you're also giving. You're giving parts of yourself. You're giving parts of your knowledge. If your instructor asks you to show something, you show that.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, Byron. On this island, there's only so many bananas. And if somebody hogs all the bananas, you're a taker. But hey, kind of what you're saying, it made me think about two things that, I'm going to highlight both of you guys on about being an asset to the gym. And, Byron, I know you're always working with the new people and, that's great, but I'm not even thinking about you being an asset that way. From all the years I've trained with you, you are always the most welcoming person. I always see you go over to the brand new guy and you introduce yourself. You're kind of like the greeter, I guess, the doorman. And you make people feel comfortable. New people feel comfortable. You take them, under the wing. You show them where the water fountain's at. You train with them their first day. And that means a lot. Even without the skills you have, you could be absolutely, totally garbage on the mat, Byron. And that skill you have right there just, you know what I mean? It just permeates so many different people. It really, gives to so many people and, just brightens their life. And Joe, I was thinking about one time, and I know I've brought this up before, but you posted you had a rough day on the mats, and you were training with your guys in New Orleans area, and it was like a competition class, and Joe being the token old guy in there, and Joe felt like he didn't bring anything to the class, and he felt like, hey, it wasn't my day, and he posted this on Facebook. Man, all those young studs basically right after Joe posted that, every one of them just jumped on there and, basically talked about how much Joe helps them out, how much Joe brings to the team. And, not only did Joe rise up and help them out, when Joe was down, every one of his teammates there, became an asset to basically help Joe up, to boost him up. And, you guys always make fun of me, but that's what I love about jiu-jitsu. That little conversation and messaging between you and your buddies and your teammates there, Joe, that I just remember telling myself that day, I was like, man, if I was in the New Orleans area, I would be training with those guys. Those guys aren't just great grapplers. They're black belt people. They are great people. And Joe just makes that gym even better. Another great person.
So what you're saying, Gary, is it doesn't matter if you're a small and young and fragile twig or if you're an old brittle stick. The trick is to get yourself in the right bundle.
Man, Joe, you brought it back. You brought it back to the topic or to the quote. Yep, perfect. Get yourself. Hey, another thing that I think is a great student, and I can tell you I struggled with this. When I first started, and I mean, it lasted a while, I was always a little afraid to ask questions. I thought I might, people might be thinking that I'm stupid or, that was a dumb question. And, you always hear people say there are no dumb questions, but you always get nervous about it. But I really believe that asking questions, because I guarantee you, if you're in a classroom, and let's just say there's only 10 people in this class, in this practice this day, and you may be the newest guy there, but I guarantee you, if you're thinking about that question, somebody else probably is, and maybe somebody else feels the same way as you, and they're a little, afraid to ask that question. That's hurting the whole room, even the experienced guys. Man, sometimes it's better just to go back over this little hint or little technique, and it makes a big difference. It's kind of going back to Joe, you're off the mat lesson. We may have the big picture, but we're missing, some of the little things that we need to do. We're going down the highway in our new Toyota Tacoma. We got gas in it, but we forgot to put oil in it. And so don't forget to ask questions.
Man, that's a really great point. I've thought about that myself. I've seen a instructor say, we're going to work on this transition from a failed armbar attempt. But before we go there, does everybody have a good grasp on the armbar? And you're looking around the room, and you're pretty sure there's a few people that could use some pointers, and nobody will raise their hand. So sometimes the coach just feeds it to you. And I'm with Gary. If you've got an opportunity to gain some more knowledge, don't hesitate to speak up and avail yourself of that opportunity.
Yeah, and I was just thinking of what you said, Joe. If the coach throws that softball out there, and even if somebody still doesn't take it, but as a purple belt or a brown belt, and you've been around in the gym a while, that maybe some other people need it, maybe we should speak up too. Hey, yeah, I'd like to go over that a little bit. And,
man, that's a great point, Gary.
Yeah, but I was just thinking that might, and it's always going to help us. Even if you've done 9 billion arm bars, what's going to be 9 billion and 10? It's just going to make you that much better.
Yep, and there might be a white belt there, been training 3 months, and they're like, man, if that purple belt, brown belt, if they can ask a question and admit that they don't know everything, then that will embolden the white belts to do the same.
Great point, Joe.
Yep, you're really changing the culture of that gym there, and making it be one that's more friendly to questions. If as the instructor, if Gary asks me to hey, I need help on, does everybody understand this transition to failed from a failed armbar? And Gary's like, oh, actually, I'm not quite sure, how to even set the armbar up, or like, obviously, we don't want to take us off topic from what we were working on. But if he asks me a basic question and I tease him about it, I've shut down conversation in the class. And everyone's going to take note that, okay, Gary asked a question, and I kind of wondered that myself, and he got teased or mocked, or it wasn't answered in a good way. That doesn't help this it'd be an environment for friendly, learning and questions. And so part of it's on the instructor, but part of it's on the students, just to ask them. I think about every time I've taught a technique, any questions, and nobody says anything. And maybe that's partly, I'm sure it's partly my fault. I need to ask it in a way. Does everybody understand these details? Does everybody understand, this finish here? Does everybody understand why we're doing this? And if I ask like a more of a leading question, it might provoke a little bit of conversation. Once you get a little bit going, people get out of their shells and realize, okay, it's okay to talk. And some people maybe prefer not to have a bunch of questions. Part of it's knowing what your instructors want. But I think asking questions shows that you care, and it shows that you're paying attention, but you haven't quite grasped everything, which isn't a bad thing because you're trying. If you're just sitting there in the corner, zonked out, half paying attention, half not, you generate zero questions in that because you don't even know what we're talking about.
I like what you said, Byron. Asking questions shows you care. And you were talking about the instructor earlier and, say, hey, great class. I really like how you went over this. And like you said, that could mean a lot to the instructor because, they probably don't hear it enough. But same thing with questions. It shows you care. When you're asking questions, your instructor's going to be stoked. Like, hey, man, this guy really cares. This guy he wants to learn. I mean, if you're a teacher, if you're an instructor, that's the guy you want. You want those people who are hungry for knowledge.
Yeah. So you go to a professor, you ask him, how to get this radio to work because you're trying to listen to the radio stations, that aren't on the island. And he answers the question, and he's a nice guy about it. If he mocks you and told you that there's no point in the radio, you're not going to go to him for more help.
Yep. Now, I'll add something real quick before we move on to the next one. In the show notes that Byron sent us, it said ask questions correctly. And I'm not sure exactly what you meant by that, Byron. But I would say that as you're moving up through jiu-jitsu and gaining a better understanding of it, if you've got a question that is not related to the specific technique that the coach is teaching, that might be a question to say for after class. Asking a question, there's no wrong question, but interrupting your instructor might not be the best way to ask the question either. So there are some things that you'll want to consider as you're moving through the ranks about when to ask certain questions and whatnot. So I thought that was worth bringing up.
Another good point, Joe.
Yeah, that's a good one. The part of the asking questions correctly is instructors know it when you ask a question and you just want to show off your knowledge. Like,
oh, that's a good one.
It's like, yeah, you're asking a question, but really you're just telling everybody in the room that you're 3 steps ahead of where we are right now. And so don't ask a question to show off or to make yourself look good. The question should be designed to help you or maybe the rest of the class better understand what's actually being shown. I'm reminded just a couple days ago, we were in class and I was showing what was it? Transition to mount from knee on stomach, and I was holding the far arm a certain way, and Matt Lowe, one of our competitive brown belts, he's like, "Why are you holding the arm that way?" And genuinely, like that was a good question because I was like, it feels like it's the right thing to do. I feel like I'm controlling his shoulder. I'm controlling his ability to rotate when I hold his arm like this. I don't know. Let's look at that. And so we kind of dug into a little bit, and he was able to make an evaluation whether that was a good thing for him to work on or not. But like as I do that transition to mount from knee on belly, which I like to do, I do like to pin this arm in a certain way. And I hadn't ever thought about really why or what it's doing. He noticed it was kind of unusual. Ask a good question. It was super relevant to what we were doing. Asking why is it done that way is usually a question that leads to like a deeper understanding. Not okay. So it's palm down in your choke. Why is it? What have to have my palm down? Like maybe not the instructor ask that in front of the whole class. Maybe ask your if you're somebody teamed up with a good partner. Ask why is palm down so important on this? I don't know. If your heart's in the right place and you're not like being disruptive to the class as you ask your questions, you don't have 40 people who all know this technique and you're the one who's way behind. Part of that's going to be you getting paired up with the right person to help you instead of delaying the other 39 people to get going on this technique. So just kind of know when it's appropriate. But, don't be shy about it. You owe it to yourself to ask good questions and you're part of the class too. And And the odds are, if other people have, if you have a question, other people have that one as well.
Yeah. So I don't want to beat this point up too much.
I feel like I did already. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, I just wanted to add something because something you said reminded me of it, that sometimes a question will be very specific to you. And there's nothing wrong with holding that question and waiting till you're drilling and the coach is walking around, and then you can ask that question. So, for instance, if you're taking a BJJ class and you're training for an MMA fight, you don't need to interrupt the whole class to say, well, what happens if my opponent starts punching from here? But when you're drilling and the coach walks by, you can say, hey, coach, I'm training for a fight, and I was wondering how this would work in a fight. Or for me, I frequently will hold a question, we'll start drilling, and the coach comes by and I say, hey, coach, I'm a little old and I'm not very flexible. Do you have another idea of how I can pull this off? So some questions are specific to you, and there's nothing wrong with just holding it and waiting and asking a little later.
So this list, when I was kind of, and obviously Joe and Gary are putting a lot into this as well, but I kind of thought of, hey, how to be a great student? And really from the perspective of there's two things, how to be a good student for yourself and to learn a lot as you progress through jiu-jitsu and really, do your best. And also from the perspective of the instructor, what does the instructor see in students? Like, all right, Joe showed up to class today, or okay, I got Gary's here. We'll have to accommodate to make sure the class still goes okay because Gary showed up. Like, there's two totally different things, and I guarantee you, instructors do have favorites. These aren't puppy dogs or children here. They have favorites. Some people walk in and instructors know it's going to be a great class. Some people walk in and know they're going to have challenges. I want you guys to be the ones that walk in. Instructors are happy that you're there. They know this is going to be an outstanding class, and one of the big ones is that students help each other out. And if you think about it, you probably learn more jiu-jitsu from your fellow students because the instructor Gary will show Joe and I a technique. And then what happens? Does Gary come to me and show me it again and then go to Joe and show the technique? No, Joe and I will pair off and we'll start working this technique. And we've got to, remember what Gary showed us, obviously, but it's in that kind of that grind in that those 10 minutes of us trying to figure this thing out and work on it and ask, Gary some questions that we really get this thing figured out. So students teach each other a lot, even if they don't try to, just because you pair off with another student, not with an instructor typically, and work on these things where a lot of the growth is done from student to student. So be aware of that and know that that's an important learning method that we have in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That's not always common, with most students.
Yep, and as you progress through the ranks, hopefully you'll be perceptive, and you see that the way that you'll help one fellow student is not necessarily the way that you help others. There's lots of different ways to help. Sometimes you help by just playing an appropriate amount of defense to make things difficult for them, but let them work on their offense. Sometimes you help by making them work on their defense. If you're better than them and you can make them work, and sometimes you help by actually offering instruction and some advice. It's different for each student, and you got to find your own groove.
And Joe, you're talking about you may be able to help a student by either being offensive or defensive, depending on really what that guy needs. The other thing I think about is helping others is, man, I tell you, your gym is normally going to have a diverse set of individuals. And, I go to people for, nutrition advice in class. I go to people for, fitness advice, stretching advice, rehab advice. I could ask Joe about, sailing advice, Byron about firefighting advice. And, I think that's another way to help. I know I've talked about when I moved, I had so many people help. I've helped other people move. I've just seen so many times that we've helped, somebody, who's sick, maybe have some kind of a fundraiser to help out too. So there's ways, where, I just think it's kind of unique in the jiu-jitsu community, but, we help out others not just to become a better grappler, to help them out in a time of need. I mean, Joe, let's go back to you. Let's go back to the hurricane. And, Man, I forget his name every time, but the guy who helped you out with drywalling and all that there, his construction company that you trained with, he, stepped up to the plate. And, I know a lot of your other guys from your school came in and helped too. So great group of individuals who helped others.
Yeah, definitely. That was Javier that helped me with my siding on the house. But even prior to that, when we first got flooded out, there was a group from a local church that came and helped us gut the house out. But then I had a pile of debris in the front yard. And my coach and about 3 of my teammates came over. And, man, we took a day and knocked that out and got it cleaned up. And, it's a beautiful thing. I love to see the way the jiu-jitsu community comes together. And we talk about helping other students out. And it's easy to just focus on the mats. But, it goes beyond that for sure. Yeah.
And then, I talked about it earlier, Byron, helping that new guy. Byron may talk to somebody and tell them, hey, I will pick you up and give you a ride. I will tell you what you need to wear so you won't feel uncomfortable. You might not have a gi. I have a gi for you. I know, Joe, you talk about you keep one there. Don't forget to bring water. But Byron will actually bring another bottle of water, just in case that guy forgets it. Hey, when you get here, we're going to bow onto the mat and bow off of the mat. Here, let me show you how that's done. And, that may not really be helping with technique, but those things mean a lot to a new student, to somebody just starting to train. I remember not knowing how to tie my belt, not knowing what's going on, like what should I wear? Am I going to look funny the first day I get in here? And it's so much easier when you have somebody holding your hand, per se, and, taking you and showing you, how to fit in if you go to the lagoon.
Yeah, the people that show up on the island periodically don't know how to fit in for sure right away. And luckily they've got Gilligan there to just show them the ropes of the island. Here's where we get the coconuts. Here's where we shower one at a time. Here's where we do our jiu-jitsu on the island. All these things. And I guess they're grappling in sand over there because they don't even have mats.
Hey, do you think, let's just say us 3 got lost in an island and we were stuck there for as long as Gilligan and his crew.
Yeah, first off, Gary, this is a nightmare scenario.
I know we would be doing jiu-jitsu. We would find that soft, sandy lagoon, and we would be training. I can guarantee you. And it would work great if any of the savages from the other side of the island came. We could defend ourselves.
Well, it's going to be amazing if somehow from the island we still produce a podcast episode.
Well, the professor did come on the radio.
Get the RSS feed going and click, click, boom, boom.
Another one I really like, and be safe. I think we always run into people that you may not want to train with. They may be a little faster, a little rougher, a little more competitive. And I guess I run into it a lot more now as I've got older. And I have changed, and I'm not as competitive or fast and crazy as I used to be. But be safe. Know how your partner wants to train. And don't be that guy who says, oh, I'm hurt. Can you go slow? And as soon as you bump and slap hands, you jump on the guy like a wounded cougar and grab that Kimura and twist with all your might. Be honest. Be honest with your teammates, and treat your teammates with respect. But, train safe. A lot of people, like we said, in a school, you have a ton of different individual characters. Some may be 60 years old and getting ready to retire. Another may be a nuclear physicist or a professor. One may be a professional MMA fighter. You may have 2 competitive grapplers who train twice a day and enter all the tournaments for money. So everybody's different. You want to keep the competitive guys safe so they don't get hurt, so they can make money. You want to keep the MMA guys safe. You don't want to hurt the old guy. You don't want to hurt the nuclear physicist. We want everybody to train safe, to be safe, so we don't get hurt. The more time on the mat, we're all going to get better.
Yep. Gary, I think one aspect to keeping yourself safe, coming at this as an older guy, is to be realistic about your expectations.
Great point.
Yeah, one guy that I saw get injured, he hasn't been back on the mat since, and this was a year and a half ago. Like, he was just sort of trying jiu-jitsu out. He seemed to be enjoying it, but was your typical, like, 30-year-old, sort of skinny, but not really in great shape. And so we're doing sort of a wrestling style deal where, you got two groups of guys on the side of the mats and two guys go in the middle, and they do a little takedown competition, and whoever wins stays in the middle, and then the next guy comes out, sort of a king of the hill kind of thing, but just with takedowns. And so when it comes to be this guy's turn, and he's been doing this long enough to be familiar with all the people in the gym, it comes to be this guy's turn, and the guy standing in the middle of the mat is a 260-pound purple belt with MMA experience. And this guy goes out and sort of just, like, I applaud him for believing in himself, but, man, he shot a sloppy double leg or something, ended up underneath the guy. The big MMA guy just sprawled and, didn't do anything dirty or mean. It was just kind of this is what you do when someone tries to take you down, and hurt the other guy's knee. So the guy's never been on the mats before or since. You got to be realistic. As a 4-month in student, you're not going to go double leg this 260-pound purple belt. Go out there, try something a little safer, and protect yourself at all times, as they would say in boxing.
Yeah, so being safe is partially in your hands and partially in your teammates' hands. A big one I look for, it does depend on what we're here for. If you're here to be an elite competitor, it may not be as big a deal. But if the vast majority of people are doing jiu-jitsu because it's enjoyable, it's hard, and we like things that are difficult that we could get better at. I mean, that's just like a natural human thing. If it's difficult and you see like you don't get better at all, people wouldn't do jiu-jitsu. That's not rewarding. But they like the rewards of their hard work paying off. So enjoy your time in the class, which if you're in a competition class and you got these super high goals, it may not be super fun all the time. But for most of us, we want to have fun. We want to enjoy the time in the class. And most instructors would rather teach a group of fun people and enjoyable people than a group of people who are not having a good time and just show up because it's more of a work thing than anything else. So just even if you are working hard, smile, have a good time, enjoy your time in the class. Instructors will much appreciate that. I would think most instructors would anyway.
Yeah, and Byron, going back to help other students too, and asking questions, kind of what we talked about. I like what you're saying, smiling. You can always pick out that guy who's smiling, and even it may not be the instructor, but if you're looking across the mat and it's a tough day, or you're afraid to ask questions, but you see that guy smiling, maybe that's the guy you would ask a question to also. I just think I would be more apt to ask a question if I saw somebody smiling all the time. What do you guys think about paying attention when your instructor's showing techniques? I have seen a lot of times where I do not see everybody paying attention. I see people having their own little conversations on the side. I kind of deem that pretty disrespectful, but I think to be a great student, to respect your teacher, pay attention. Even if you've seen it 100 times before, you're still going to learn something. You are still learning. I can't think about how many times I've been shown something and it's changed. And even if you've been with your instructor for a long time and it's now come up 52 different times, your instructor is learning too. Don't think your instructor basically knows all 999 things in jiu-jitsu, because there's an infinite amount of stuff to know, and your instructor's evolving. He's getting better. He's learning new ways, kind of like Byron was talking about when he was talking with his teammate Matt Lowe about the way to grab the arm. So who knows? Your instructor could show a different way to do something. I was just looking the other day on online, and I saw a different way to lock up the leg. Rolly Delgado was showing something, and how to lock up a leg that was totally different than anything I've ever seen. Just like Byron working on grabbing that arm, and Matt Lowe not seeing that before was asking about it. So, pay attention during technique. Be a listener. Pay attention. Don't put your head down. Watch what your instructor's doing. It'll just make everything go much better.
Gary, while you were talking about that, it reminded me of something Byron said earlier in the podcast, and that was that there are some students that instructors are going to enjoy having in class more. There's some students that instructors are going to put a little more work into. It's just the reality of life. And one way to make sure that you're not on that list is to disrespect your instructor and be goofing around or talking during the technique portion. So I think that's an important point. There was also a point that we skipped over that I think kind of dovetails into this, because you mentioned like maybe being bored with the technique, or in my case, sometimes I think techniques don't necessarily apply to the way I do jiu-jitsu or my age or anything. But the point that we skipped over was to be a student of BJJ. And kind of the way I look at that is the instructor might be showing something that takes more flexibility and mobility than I have to really do it correctly in a live situation. But that doesn't mean I can't still be interested in learning that technique. So yeah, come to class every night to learn, and they may be teaching something that you don't think fits into your game, but be excited about learning and understanding it anyway.
I like what you said there, Joe. I was kind of trying to figure out which one you were going to go to, and that's kind of what I thought you were going to. So as we said, good minds think alike. But what I really like about that, it made me start thinking, you're talking about be a student of jiu-jitsu. And, I've played baseball my whole life. I played basketball my whole life, and really enjoyed those and still do enjoy those. But I just don't always remember that I could be a student for so long. And I mean, maybe I could, of those sports, maybe I could learn the history and learn players from 1920 or something and stuff like that. But jiu-jitsu, I just feels like it's a little different than those sports, like that I'm always learning something. Like you said, I can always look over some more technique. I can always do this and I can do that. And I mean, I guess you can probably do it in those sports, but it didn't feel like that for me. And it almost just seems like, we always made jokes about the career college student, who's, in his 12th year of school. But it's like we're in, however many years we've been training, we are in, 15th year of jiu-jitsu school, and it's not going to end. And it just keeps going and going and going. And we're always going to learn. And we'll be talking here 10 years down the road that we're still learning. And it just makes me think about how much we use our brain in jiu-jitsu, being a student. And one thing I always think, and I don't know if there's ever been studies done, or I don't know if it's too new of an art really that's, really starting to hit mainstream, but I really think there will be like less dementia down the road, especially with people who train jiu-jitsu. I mean, we'll have high cases of arthritis and stuff like that, but I really think that because we're going to be working our mind so much, our mind, as long as we're training, is always going to be working overtime. And I think that's just going to really help us as we get older.
As long as getting choked unconscious doesn't cause that.
Yeah, maybe some of the good stuff. But I can tell you, I've been training 15 years. I've never went to sleep.
That's awesome, Gary.
You know what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Somebody's going to put me to sleep within a week. I tap early and I tap quick.
To bring us back, kind of where we were a minute ago. Yeah, back on the island. Thanks, Gary. I'm forgetting to do these things. To take that tropical breeze back where we were, instructors know who pays attention. So if Gary and I are demoing a technique, and Gary says, I want you to do the Kimura, and I want you to hold their wrist this particular way. And then he shows it, and he says, hey, as we do this, remember, grab it like this. And then, like things get repeated. You show techniques more than once. And Gary has said this thing like 4 times to grab the wrist this particular way. And then you guys, everybody pairs off. And you don't even know how to grab the wrist, or like you're grabbing the wrist the wrong way or the old way, or like maybe even Gary says, this is a new thing. I want you guys all to try it. I've found a lot of success with it. Try this, this way like this. You're going to love it. And you pair off and you don't do that. You don't even know that he said that. People notice those things, and it doesn't make your instructor feel like you paid attention, or that like if it was John Danaher showing the technique, would you pay attention? Yeah, you probably would. If it's Gary and you ignore his detail about grabbing the wrist, how does that make Gary feel? Is he going to want to show you a bunch more stuff? Or if Gary walks by and you say, "Hey, I've tried it and I think I like that way better," that's a great way to interact with your instructor and to show like that you paid attention, that you actually tried it, and hopefully it worked for you. Or you try, hey, I tried it. I don't think I got it all the way because it feels weird to me. Maybe Gary can give you a little tip there or help you from that. Maybe it's not for everybody. But if they detail something and they make a point of it, like this is the main thing of what we're showing here, do it this way. I'm showing this leg drag. I want you to take the time and staple the leg to the ground. This is important. This doesn't need to be a fast pass at this point. We're going to control this person. And you fly through it. You don't staple the leg. You don't, do step by step. It's like, man, I don't think they paid attention to that. And, this comes out, like Joe was saying, be a student of jiu-jitsu. Even if it's not a technique that's going to be for you, you might be, fighting against it someday. Maybe somebody will have a question about it and you could help them with that. Like, hey, I'm not an expert at this, but I have knowledge about it because I've paid attention in class. And it's not difficult, and I don't think everybody don't have to do all these things all the time. We're human. Clearly, sometimes your mind will be somewhere else, and you won't pay attention to everything. But if you could just kind of increase a few of these things a little bit, you'll be far better off. Another one here is to be teachable. So if Joe and I are rolling, and so every time I roll with Gary, he's able to Kimura me if he wants to. Maybe he's bored with Kimuras at the moment, and he doesn't Kimura me. And Joe is almost Kimura-ing me, but I just finish it off. I fight it off a little bit, and Gary comes up, "Hey Joe, when he's doing that, I want you to do this." And Joe has a decision to make.
Gary, zip it, Gary. I got
this. Does Joe try that, or does Joe keep doing it the way he's doing? And if you're teachable, you at least try it. And that's a big thing about how much further you're going to go in jiu-jitsu. Maybe it is garbage. Maybe Gary's got a trick elbow or shoulder or something weird with him that lets him do this, and you can't pull it off. But you should try it. If your coach is telling you something.
Yeah, okay, if it's your coach.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking, what if it's that guy who's there the first day and he's head to toe and tap out, and he's watched MMA 7 times and he's an expert and is telling you to do that? That may not be the time to listen. Yeah. But if it's your coach, yeah, definitely listen.
Or a good source. Or like you could be a purple belt and a blue belt who's got a Kimura showing you detail in Kimura. Yeah. Be teachable. That's an important trait to have to be a good student. Yeah. Pretty self-explanatory.
I also think be teachable too is expressions. As somebody's telling you something, looking at them, paying attention. Don't roll your eyes. Don't expressions can really show that maybe you're not teachable. Maybe, your instructor could get a little upset, depending on how you're reacting to what he's saying. Yeah. And, go ahead, Joe.
Well, I was going to get back to the guy decked out in tap out gear from head to toe. Even as an upper belt, if you at least respect him and listen to him, we get back to what we were talking about earlier, where we're setting the tone of the culture in the room. Yep. Because a younger or a new student sees us showing that respect and listening, and then they're going to be more likely to do the same.
Great point, Joe. Very good point.
Yeah, and these guys, just like on the island, they show up, they're there for the week, and then they're gone. And somehow they left the island and didn't take anybody with them, didn't really change anything on the island either, and it's back to normal. Every week.
Yeah, I think if we more welcoming to them, maybe they would have took us with them, and we would have been saved. And if we would have got saved, we would have more access to training. You know, our problem is our training is getting a little stunted because we're only training with 3 people, and we don't have access to the internet. We don't have access to any of the training sites, so it's not helping us.
Yeah, but there was that one group of guys that came to the island, and they were professional grapplers, and Gary was showing them his his Kimura details, and they snuck off in the middle of the night because they're like, we can rule the grappling world with these techniques, and nobody will ever know where we got them from.
Yeah, but they didn't like the name of a lot of our moves. You know, the coconut crunch, the banana slip, you know, the gorilla stomp. So yeah, we had some crazy names.
Oh man, Gary, I question what's going on in your head sometimes. You just crank out names like that right away, man. That's impressive. Another thing that great students are, they are self-motivated. They don't come in complaining about things and blaming, you know, life for their circumstances. They come in, they're driven. If they have an obstacle, they're looking to get past that. They're focused. They're motivated. And sometimes we all need a little bit of a cheerleader to get us going in the right direction, you know, given any given day. But are you normally self-motivated? Do you normally walk into class and, you know, you're happy to be there, you're excited, you're ready to train, you're motivated? Those are top level students who are self-motivated. They're able to drive themselves in the direction that they need to go. Clearly, I mean, that's not necessarily that's ideal. Sometimes jiu-jitsu is great for people who need that help. I don't want to exclude them. If you're struggling and you're kind of, let's just say you're having a rough year, maybe some bad things have happened, maybe you've been sick, maybe, you know, a life change, maybe a divorce or something like that is happening. You come in and you're kind of down. You need to be motivated. That's fine. And that's what the team is there for, and people will hopefully step up and do that to you. But ultimately, you want to be the one that helps push other people to help reach their goals. You want to be able to motivate yourself into the right direction. But I don't want to take this one in the wrong way, because jiu-jitsu is helping a lot of people, and not everybody is self-motivated. But ideally, you're able to drive your own car, as in drive to the destination you want to go in life, and be motivated, much like Gary or Joe.
Yeah. The one thing I've noticed about jiu-jitsu people, they are some motivated people. You know, other sports I've played, Sundays nobody would ever do anything because football was on. Jiu-jitsu people, boy, they all train on Sundays. They could care less if football's on. We'll train during the Super Bowl. We train, you know, Christmas Day, you know, Thanksgiving Day. Jiu-jitsu is some crazy people like that. Really you know, big snowstorms. You go to the local YMCA, there's nobody, you know, working out in the gym. You go to the local jiu-jitsu gym, people will still show up. Jiu-jitsu people are very motivated. You know, you were talking about self-motivated versus, you know, sometimes you need the motivation of your teammates. And I can tell you there had been times where, you know, especially earlier in my career, that, you know, I didn't know if jiu-jitsu was going to be it. You know, maybe I wasn't enjoying it as much for some reason or another. But one thing that really got me motivated, every time I was in that situation, I might have missed a couple of classes or whatever. My instructor used to call every now and then, just wondering what was going on, and really wasn't just trying to get me back. You know, I mean, he probably wanted me back in the gym, but he was just making sure I was okay. And when I got a call like that, and it's just like what you were saying with students too, you know, helping other students out, but it just made me realize that, you know, people really cared, and just something as little as that would then get me motivated again to come back and, you know, make me feel special, feel important. So, you know, make it feel like these guys want me on this island.
Yeah. You know, we've talked off and on throughout this podcast about, you know, when we need support or we need encouragement or we need motivation, that we can draw that from our teammates. But it's important to kind of look at this as like, it's a bank account. And when we take support, when we take encouragement, we're taking a withdrawal. And when we give support and we give encouragement, we're making a deposit. And if we're continually withdrawing more than we're depositing,
we're going to make a repossession or a foreclosure.
Exactly. So, I mean, the serious point is you always want to be in the positive on that. You know that someday you're going to need your team, and in order to have something to withdraw, you have to be contributing and making contributions first. So it's important to keep an even balance.
Joe, I don't know how you did that. Just for all you guys listening, I'm a banker and Joe's a captain. And I could never talk about being a captain like Joe just did and make a great analogy like that. Joe, you were my hero. Great job.
Okay, well, I stole that, and if anybody has not read any of Stephen Covey's books, you should consider doing so. So that's where I stole it from. But it's a good way of looking at that.
But you're a great student. You know, you're a student of Stephen Covey, and you've learned. So good job. You were motivated, to listen to that, and you're teachable. You know, you learned from it, and you work hard. You know, you always enjoy your time in class too, and you always help others. Joe, you ask good questions.
So what you're saying is, I am episode 286.
And also, Joe, you believe in yourself.
Oh, that's a good point. Yes. So
you're
that's
not
interesting.
In the fact that you're not imaginary.
Exactly.
He does have imaginary friends, but he believes in himself.
No,
well, they believe in me too.
That's one of the kind of the final points we have on here is believe in yourself. And that's, I guess, sometimes easier said than done. I know in jiu-jitsu we're all going to have frustrations. Even the students you look at who are just like picking this up super easy and it's going great for them. They breeze to white belt, blue belt, they win a bunch of tournaments, purple belt, they win a bunch of tournaments. Someday it's going to they're going to hit some level where it's like, okay, it's hard now. And they need to believe that they don't have this fake confidence or whatever, but just know that if you work hard at something, you'll get better at it. That's all I mean by in believing yourself, that you're going to be able to work hard, change the way you're doing things a little bit, learn some things, and be better at it. And whether you're starting from an elite level, you come in as a Olympic wrestler and you're trying to compete well and do that sort of thing, or you come in off the couch for 15 years and you're trying to do jiu-jitsu. Just believe that if you are willing to put in some work, you'll get better and you'll head in the right direction. And you may not be able to catch Olympic athletes and these top level athletes and world-class competitors. But just that's not necessarily the goal that we all should have. But you will continue to get better if you train hard. And even Gary is proof of that.
I'm definitely proof. Did you say something?
I said even Gary.
Hey, Byron, one other thing I wanted to say that's not on our list is hygiene. I think if you practice good hygiene, that's being a good student. You're not putting any of your teammates at risk to catch any of the mat funk, which is going to keep them off. And, people will want to train with you. Hygiene is important.
Yeah, if you're the funnest guy, you make me laugh, and you know a bunch of great jiu-jitsu, and you're willing to share that and everything, and you smell terrible, man, it's going to be hard to want to train with you. Come in, be clean. That's a good one, Gary. Coming from you even, you always recommend people take a shower.
Yeah, yep.
Jiu-jitsu is one of the rare workouts where it's perfectly okay to take a shower before you work out and then again after you work out.
It's not only perfectly okay, it's actually preferred that you shower beforehand.
Byron, I really like this episode. This was a very enjoyable episode, and I think it's going to be very beneficial to a lot of people.
Thanks, Gary. That's one of the keys of being a great podcaster is to just talk about how great it's going, and and having two great co-hosts like Gary and Joe. Really
if we just keep talking about how great we are, maybe we will get to be number one in the that guy's podcast in rankings.
Exactly.
Yep.
So Gary has said something nice about Byron, and I appreciate it. At this point, I'd like to say something nice about Byron, but I can't think of anything right now. So.
Good, because I was nervous.
Maybe we'll come back to that later if you ever can think of anything.
You know what? The one thing that is nice about me is I do like to train with the listeners.
That's right. If they're in Wichita, Kansas, they can train with you. They could also train with Gary if they're in that area. How would they let you know they're in the area?
BjjBrick@gmail.com. Send us a message on Facebook, BjjBrick. And they can also train with Joe. And I do want to assure everybody, we do practice hygiene. But Joe, you're south of Houston and near the New Orleans areas there sometimes also.
Exactly. And I will shower before we roll. So let me know if you're in the area, guys.
South of Houston and north of hygiene.
Oh, speaking of that, hygiene, thanks for listening.
Yes, thanks to all the genes out there. Really, it was a special shout out to them this week. We do have an article this week. We do want to make sure we cover that. Nothing we need to go into, major in depth is 12 sports nutrition tips that anyone can benefit from. It's on mindbodygreen.com. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. A couple of them that hit me up is they've got a whole list here, but something that strikes me kind of as overall theme is think of it like you're fueling something, like a machine, or your body or your muscles. Don't think of it as you're eating food or you're hungry, you want this. Think of food as fuel to let you do what you want to do when you're burning it. And so if you want to perform well in jiu-jitsu, or support your muscle growth or recovery, there's some great tips on here. Like they recommend eating nuts, seeds, and salmon for great sources of protein. They're going to support muscle growth. So that think of oh, I want a snack. No, okay, my snack is a great opportunity to get some fuel to help support my muscles to grow. And that's one that kind of struck me as like, yeah, that's a good way to think of it.
Yeah, I like that one. Byron, so you've had a chance to read the article. How about point number 8? Hype around nutrition products and real foods are better. If I use protein powder on a regular basis, what would you substitute for protein powder?
Well, they recommend you could try swapping protein powder for nut butter in a smoothie.
Joe, great one.
Word for word, my friends. Or make your own sports drink.
Good one, Joe. Byron with his nut butter.
Like peanut butter is an example of that.
Actually, if you've ever tried like cashew butter, that stuff's good.
So Joe's actually tried it, and he's recommended it.
He's had cashew butter, not nut butter.
Gary.
So yeah, if you wanted some different protein, actually, and it's not cheap, but it's not prohibitively expensive either. They make cashew butter, peanut butter, some other things you could try. Nut butter.
Hey, the one I really like is number 7, hydration station. How's that for a rhyme? Dehydration, as they say, is a buzzkill and will make any of us feel fatigued. Dehydration is important. I, try to watch my, intake, and I try to up my intake on days I know I'm going to be rolling, up my intake before I'm rolling, after I'm rolling, recovering, and hydration is important. And I mean, I've had a lot of people say that, but if you really want to learn a lot about hydration, just talk to the expert, Bobby Boucher.
Quality H2O, my friend.
Another, go ahead.
I was just saying, can you imagine if Bobby Boucher was on the island?
Well, we'd never be thirsty.
They'd be well taken care of. And just like on the island, you want to have your meals timed out correctly, and they recommend that in tip number 5. Time your meals. I take it more as plan your day a little bit. Don't end up to the point where, okay, usually eat lunch at noon, and now it's 1:30. It's okay, 2:00 shows up, and you're looking for something to eat, and you just eat anything you can because you're eating lunch 2 hours behind where you wanted to. You got to eat before you train. have a plan. Know what you're going to have for lunch. Maybe bring it with you. Know what you're going to have for breakfast when you wake up or before you go to bed that night. When you plan things out, it makes it easier. You don't have to worry about what am I going to eat. You just know what you're going to have, and then it's easier to make that future version of yourself eat healthier. It's easy for me to grab a salad and take it to work in the morning, and then when I get to lunchtime, I'm going to eat my salad. But if I don't do that, I'll probably find something a little less healthy to eat when I get there. So, does salad sound great to me right now? Well, it's what I brought. I'm going to eat it. It's easier to make that decision in the past. Make the future Byron eat healthy. He'll do it. I know that guy. He's too lazy to find something else. So I think just planning your meals and knowing what time you want to do things is helpful as well. We don't need to cover this entire article. Anything else jump out here besides that tip from you, Joe?
Yeah, actually, number 10 says crowd out the unwanted, and it says stop focusing on what you won't eat, or I would interpret that as in what you can't eat. What's outside of your nutritional goals. Stop focusing on that and start focusing on what you will eat, or what would be good for you. And I got to tell you, every time I cook like a really good vegetable medley with, fresh vegetables and garlic and onions and peppers mixed in, I eat that. And it's like, why do I ever eat junk food? This is so good. And so, I think for me, it helps to not worry about, I can't eat this, I can't eat that, I've got to avoid this, and just focus on, quality food.
Yeah. And when you're stranded on an island, it's quality food. It's mostly bananas and coconuts. I mean, great food.
There's no processed. There's no microwavable burritos. That's for sure.
Oh man. Yep, good coconut. Another one of the nuts. Supplied on the island there. Very healthy, and you want your coconut getting broken at an inappropriate time. You want to have it cracked, right at time for lunch.
Yeah, you definitely want to crack your nuts and then take a drink of those coconuts.
Gary, you throw it out there sometimes, and there's just no way to come back from that.
Just go over the top. We just went off Niagara Falls in a barrel.
So how about those Patreon supporters, Byron?
We love our Patreon supporters, and what happens is some people hear this podcast and think, man, I love this show, and they go and support us financially through the means of Patreon. If you want to support us for like $1 a show, that would be outstanding. We have a few Patreon supporters that are supporting us for $3 per episode, but either way, we're happy to have all of our Patreon supporters. They're backing us. We mail you out a 5-inch BjjBrick gi patch and a sticker. And we also have a private Facebook group where we're asking some behind-the-scenes questions to our Patreon supporters and getting some information to and from you guys, in a fun way. And you're invited to join that group if you are a Patreon supporter. I want to give a shout-out to just a couple of them this week. Keith, David, and Rob. Thank you guys for your continued support on Patreon.
Yeah, we really appreciate you supporting the show. It definitely means a lot, and it helps us out. And, the more you help the show, the less Byron will have to make these terrible audiobooks to make some money, to help the show out. And like this week's one, Byron was talking about, how he'd been lost on a desert island by himself at one point, not castaway, but, kind of like that. But Byron's new audiobook, and it has to go with nutrition too. We talked about it, and the name of his book is How I Spent 2 Years on an Island by Myself and Gained 15 Pounds by Eating Nothing But My Nut Butter. And Byron, could you just tell us about, the nutrition and how you got so much butter that you could gain all that weight?
Yeah, Gary, great question. And, life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. You end up on an island with nothing around but coconuts, and you go nuts. And you start harvesting coconuts, and there's a lot that you do.
Byron, wait a minute. Did you say butt coconuts? What's a butt coconut?
They're actually located at the bottom of the palm tree, a little bit in the ground there.
Are
most
they
people-
like two coconuts that are kind of morphed together but have a little crack in between?
There's a crack in it, but it's not broken. So you take these
So-
special coconuts.
Yeah, what does really nut butter taste like, Byron? And you must really like it. Do you eat it with a spoon, your fingers, a fork? I'm not familiar with it.
Maybe with a straw.
Perhaps a straw. A straw, or you know what? I've also fashioned a bamboo coconut, a bamboo spoon, and that really helps out a lot. But it's just.
Do you ever mix it with anything to, because I heard the smell is a little pungent, and but is there anything you mix it with to really? I know, like you said, you really blew up because you love the taste so much. You actually gained weight.
Yeah. So the best way I found to prepare these are to roast the nuts over an open fire. Get them warmed up there. It kind of brings in a different smell or aroma to the nut butter that it will produce, and it gives it that nice kind of a smoky flavor, and that's really where I got hooked in on that. And what I found as a byproduct of eating all this nut butter is there's a lot of nut butter oils that I'm ingesting on this, and I began to sweat
Essential oils.
I began to sweat these oils out of my pores, and I kept thinking of how great it's going to be to go out there and compete in some no-gi jiu-jitsu and be basically in a state where nobody could hold me down or, you really get a hold of me. So slippery. And they would try to, I had dreams of them like trying to bust me for adding, like slippery substance to my body. But no, it's all coming out of me naturally. It has, these 2 years of eating nothing but nut butter really have paid off, and that I just permeate this stuff. Also believe that I have some severe conditions with my heart, and I've basically clogged that sucker up good. Because when you eat only nothing but coconuts and nut butter, you're probably doing some damage to some things in your system, and I'm just picking that one as one of them because I don't really know.
And remember, we're not doctors, so don't take Byron's advice as he was a doctor, because he's really not a professor either.
Oh, man, you're hammering me, Gary. I'm losing all my classifications and ranks. But I'll
Speaking
take
of
that.
ranks, let's hear from Joe, the captain.
Well, I'm just wondering how you produce that much nut butter on an island by yourself. It must have taken a lot of imagination.
He's got a lot of time on his hands. Like, the one thing I noticed, like, if in the book,
Joe.
towards the end in the appendix there, I put a picture of Byron before and after. And you could see Byron before, just looks like a regular guy. And afterwards, you can see he's got an extra 40 pounds, and his right forearm was massive.
Well, that's how
So you
I would
can see
literally
that-
crack the coconuts. They're very hard to crack, guys. If you guys ever actually tried to crack one of these, it's very difficult.
No.
You got to find the
Yeah.
right place to do it. You need some equipment, and it takes a few minutes to get this thing to happen.
But yeah, so everybody check out Byron's audiobook
From your local library.
from your local library, or any sort of I won't even go down that.
Thank you, Gary. The less I have to edit out of this one, the better.
Yeah. I learned, Byron. I'm a good student.
You are teachable. But yeah, that book will never be out, and because you know what, guys,
You wouldn't be able to pick it up off the shelves because all the oils on it, you would drop it.
the master is never finished with his creation, and I'm just never
We know you've
quite
never
satisfied with what I'm producing here. So I'm just gonna keep working on it until I get better.
There you go.
Oh, also, hey guys, follow us on social media. Joe is doing great things on our Facebook page. A lot of good conversations. He's finding really cool stuff. I don't know where you get all this stuff, but you find some great things to share. New chokes and and interesting competition footage from jiu-jitsu to wrestling and whatever else. It was basically interesting to talk about. Doing great there, Joe. We also have an app, BjjBrick app, where you can download the show and listen to us on the dedicated BjjBrick mobile app. Get it on your phone. Next week, we have an interview with Jake McKenzie. Look forward to bringing that to you guys. Till then, stay sweaty, my friend.
And don't forget to shower so you don't have nut butter.
And if you have nut butter, don't forget to shower. Train hard, train smart, get better, guys. We'll see you on the mats.
I think they make a nut butter soap.
Thank you for listening. I hope you find the time today to roll. After all, the best way to get better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Joe, nut butter. I don't think I've ever laughed harder on the show than that.
He's like, what would you do with the instead of protein powder? Literally, it says instead of protein powder, substitute nut butter.
I was like, I had to read it like 2 times. I was like,
so did I. I took a second, like,
I was like,
I'm reading it.
Good one, Joe.
I doubt the author of the article ever hear that, but I wonder what they would think of us analyzing their work.
Yeah, right.
They probably did a lot of hard research and all this stuff on it, and we just we did talk about some relevant things, but it did fall apart. Rightfully so.
I mean, the whole episode fell apart from the start, but I think it was good though.
No, it was a good one. We had a lot of conversation.
The topic was great.
Yep.
So was the subtopic of Gilligan's Island. That was fun.